10 Untold Facts About the Life of Ric Flair. Wrestling fans and non-fans alike know the legendary Ric Flair as a 16-time World Wrestling Champion, a guy who rides limousines, flies Learjets and is overall quite the son of a gun. But there's a lot more to the guy than figure 4 leg locks, expensive robes, and wooing all the live long day. After all, you don't craft a 40-year pro wrestling career by being boring. 1. He came from a shady orphanage. Many fans know Ric Flair's real name is Richard Fleer, same name, but way cooler. But do you know his real name? Probably not, because even Flair himself isn't sure. Ric Flair, as he explained in his autobiography, To Be the Man, was born February 25, 1949, and his name was Fred. His last name was either Phillips, Stewart, or Demery, but he has no idea because he never met his parents. When he was just a couple weeks old, his parents reportedly abandoned him at an orphanage called the Tennessee Home Children's Society. We say reportedly because THCS was a super shady operation, one that, as recounted by the Times, was known to steal children from poor parents. Often through deceitful documentation made legal through the society's cushy relationship with Tennessee Judge Camille Kelly, and then charge exorbitant amounts to families looking to adopt. Fred was one such child, and he was sent off to live with the Fleer family a week or so after arriving at the THCS. They renamed him Rick and started him on the path to nature boydom. If nothing else, it makes total sense that Flair, one of the best rule breakers in wrestling history, got his start at an orphanage that did nothing but break the rules. 2. He nearly died in a 1975 plane crash. Flair started wrestling in December 1972 and stopped just a few years ago. Amazingly, the man's career came really close to ending almost as soon as it began. As Canoe recounted, on October 4, 1975, Flair and several other wrestlers were flying to a show in a small Cessna plane. Apparently, the pilot dumped fuel because the plane was too heavy, what with all the bulky wrestlers chilling inside, and the old bird ran out of gas and crashed just before reaching its destination. The pilot died, a wrestler named Johnny Valentine was paralyzed for life and had to retire, and Flair broke his back in 3 separate areas. Amazingly, that was the preferable fate, as he was apparently originally supposed to sit in Valentine's seat. Had he would likely have been gone decades ago. As it stood, Flair's back was broken, and doctors told him he would never wrestle again. They also said his recovery time would be at least a year. Flair, being a stubborn old man even in his 20s, refused to accept that. He started hardcore rehabilitation and was back in the ring by February 1976. From a thrice broken back to the ring in 4 months, no wonder death failed to take Ric Flair after bowel surgery. Hence not the Nature Boy, hence the Nature Highlander. 3. He wasn't the first Nature Boy. Ric Flair calls himself the Nature Boy, which doesn't make any sense, since his high-rolling ladies' man gimmick has precisely nothing to do with the environment, but that wasn't his idea. In fact, he basically stole it from another wrestler, the original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. He didn't just use Rogers' nickname either. Like Flair, Rogers was a flamboyant, braggadocious, arrogant ladies' man with bleached blonde hair, a mastery of a figure 4 leg lock. This was a guy who, according to WWE.com, after winning the NWA World Championship in 1961 said of himself, "To a nicer guy, it couldn't happen." He took the name Nature Boy from a jazz song, even though, as with Flair, his character had less than squat to do with nature, and rode that character to becoming WWE Champion in 1963. He was the first WWE Champion, in fact. After quickly losing it to Bruno Sammartino, Rogers mostly vanished. Years later, Ric Flair borrowed the gimmick wholesale, and in 1979, Rogers reappeared to challenge the young upstart. Flair ultimately won the Battle of the Nature Boys and is now synonymous with the name, despite it not being his thing. If Rogers was Mother Nature's boy, then Flair is like the stepchild come to steal the inheritance. 4. Has been world champion way more than 16 times. A huge part of Flair's gimmick is his being world champion an amazing 16 times. Oddly enough, for a hyperbole-driven industry like pro wrestling, this number is an understatement. In truth, Flair has been world champion anywhere from 18 to 25 times, depending which wrestling historian you ask. There were several instances in the NWA where Flair would lose the title in another country, quickly gain it back, and have the switch go unannounced by the NWA. These were phantom title changes, designed to make the local fans happy. In one case, Flair lost to Puerto Rican legend Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico, only to gain the belt back just a couple weeks later. In another, Flair lost to Dominican Republic favorite Jack Venano in the DR because he recognized the crowd was about to riot if he kept the belt. So he changed the script and lost on purpose twice to preserve everyone's safety. When he returned to the States, he had the belt, and everyone pretended the Venano thing never happened. As time went on, it became harder to pull off phantom title changes because there was more media reporting on everything. Still, Flair had some title reigns disputed up until his final days as champion, mostly because the storylines made so little sense that no one could tell when one reign ended and another began. 5. Rap songs keep name-checking him. You wouldn't think hip-hop would care about some old pro wrestler. And yet Ric Flair seemingly gets name-checked by rappers more often than actual rappers do. Hip-hop simply cannot get enough of the guy, despite him rarely, if ever, rhyming his promos. It makes sense. Flair's character is all about money, women, fine clothes, champagne, jet-setting, and being the coolest and most awesome person in the room. Hip-hop loves all those things, so Nature Boy's a bit of a rap cult hero. The list also features 3 songs literally titled Ric Flair, because subtlety in hip-hop is rarer than good steak. Flair even appears on the occasional track, usually as a sample. On Meek Mill's Bout That Life, for example, Flair makes an appearance to rant, "It's so hard for me to sit back here, in the studio, looking at a guy out here hollering my name. When last year I spent more money on spilt liquor and bars from one side of this world to the other than you made." This was taken from an old NWA promo, but applies to young rappers just as much as it did to young wrestlers. 6. WCW almost changed his ring name to Spartacus. Ric Flair by any other name, or any other gimmick, is like a sacrifice. So naturally, someone tried to make that sacrifice in WCW, and the proposed character change would be the dumbest pro wrestling idea ever, if someone didn't decide. Intended to make David Arquette a wrestling champion years later. 7. The plane ride from hell.no list of wrestling's proudest moments would be complete without mentioning airplane trip from hell. In 2002, WWE ended its European tour and flew back on a plane chartered by WWE. Vince McMahon made the mistake of creating an empty box, which some wrestlers have used to disastrous consequences. Drunk wrestlers fight on planes, sexually harass flight attendants, take drugs, and often act like legendary broadcaster Jim Ross put on his Ross Report blog, "Kids with parents are away," and leave the wine cabinet unlocked. Ric Flair is one of the masterminds. According to former WWE wrestlers X-Pac and Justin Credible, who were on the flight, a drunk Flair came into contact with at least 2 flight attendants. According to Credible, with trash flying everywhere, Flair will go to the flight attendants, "Come on honey. Wearing cape open woo-woo. We guess this isn't what Flair has in mind when he brags about being a flying jet gun." It's not just rumors about wrestlers. As reported by Grantland, 2 of the flight attendants sued WWE for sexual harassment, claiming Flair was topless, twirling his penis, while wearing nothing but a revealing gown. Flair, of course, denies the allegations, but the women have successfully negotiated a deal from WWE, so do it as you please. 8. Has terrible with money. A huge reason Flair kept wrestling well into his 60s is because he had to. Flair is drowning in debt and mismanages his money to such a degree, the bills keep piling up. 9. The Four Horsemen name came about by accident. Ric Flair's wrestling career was largely defined by his association with the Four Horsemen, a group of heel wrestlers he led in the 80s and 90s, who would wreak havoc and often monopolize the championship of their promotions. But the iconic fear-inducing name of the group comes not from a certain screenwriter or even from a master of publicity like Flair, but one of his fellow horsemen. Even more humorously, it came purely by chance. 10. He used to be a huge, bruising, badass brawler. Ric Flair, despite always having an impressive body and still athletic with bulging biceps in his 60s, is rarely considered a big man. But at the start of his career, he was unmistakably a giant wrestler of enormous strength, weighing about 280 pounds, according to Les Thatcher, a rival of his at the time, and completely in appearance. Early pictures of the future Nature Boy show him as a brown-haired man, with short brown hair, a stocky build, and a much more aggressive mouth style than Hess known for. Language. Swole Flair is more interested in lifting weights and bowing than stealing kisses and limousine rides. He lost a lot of weight after a plane crash in 1975, and his broken back prevented him from fighting light before. So, as CBS Sports explains, he changed his style, becoming a more technical wrestler, seasoned in terms of breaking the law. With a new style and a name like Flair, he transformed himself into the legendary 80s, 90s, 00s and 10s wrestler unimaginable without.